Tonight we're going to talk about one of the most iconic pieces of film ever shot in the topic of Sasquatch and Bigfoot, which is the Roger Patterson film shot in 1967 in Bluff Creek, California.
Without a doubt, definitely. That set the bar, and that's one awesome piece of footage.
Yeah, and just obviously, Dwayne and I weren't around. We didn't know Roger at the time. So, there's a lot of different information published about Roger, but we'll talk a little bit about what we know. And then we'll kind of get into the film itself. We are going to show the film in its original state. We are going to show it in both black and white and color, which I think will be really kind of cool. So just give us a minute. But first, let's talk about Roger Patterson. What do we know?
Well, I'll start with it. He was an opportunist. He was a guy that was trying to make a buck any way he could. I believe he made many stagecoaches, and he did what he could do to make a dollar.
Exactly. And I think that's the consensus, right? That he was struggling at the time. He did a lot of odd jobs. Is kind of what we know about him, to kind of make ends meet, which I think a lot of us have probably done in our lives. So obviously he was very passionate about the subject of Sasquatch and Bigfoot. He had, heard all of the tribal stories and information. And, he decided he was going to make a movie and a short film. And so he needed to raise some money to head down to California, where he had heard these stories from logging companies and whatnot. And so he did raise some money from a lot of different people. That's kind of the buzz. And, assuming that the film went well and he got the footage, he was going to kind of cut him in on the deal.
Yeah, well, he got the footage. That's for sure. It's an iconic piece of footage.
Exactly. And, so he had to get a couple things in order. He had to raise money for the camera gear that he was going to take down to California. And so he needed to do that. And
he needed resources. He needed horses. He needed, a way to get there, the camping. Everything that goes along with spending 2 weeks in the wood, 2-3 weeks. Yeah,
I think it was about 3 weeks. And we'll talk a little bit about some of his crew that he took with him here in a minute. But, certainly, it's, going from Yakima, Washington down to California in the 60s. That's a pretty good trek, especially with that those old vehicles.
Most definitely. Yeah, air conditioning wasn't quite up to snuff back then.
Yeah, the cars, they'd overheat and all those different things, So anyway, so he needed some good equipment to get there. And then, he's going to navigate a lot of heavy terrain in the mountains there. And so he needed somebody really good in the outdoors and the wilderness. And, of course, he's going to go horse packing. So he's looking for the right guy to help him on that task as well. And so, he had to raise a lot of resources to get there. But we're going to first take a look at the film. Again, we're going to show it in black and white and color tonight. We are going to pause on the most infamous frame.
Frame 352, I believe.
Yeah, and so we're going to pause the video every time the creature turns. But again, we're going to keep it in its original format and a lot of cleanup of the images and whatnot. But I think it's important, and at least to me, it's very nostalgic to see it in its original form.
I agree with you, Chuck. I think the best way to watch it is what they seen, what he's seen. That's what it was. That's what it was filmed. You can manipulate it all you want. It kind of loses its authenticity, I think, for me after that. But, I still go back and watch the original. It's herky and jerky, but that's what he's seen. That's what happened that day.
Exactly. So just give us a minute and enjoy the Patterson film, and we'll be right back. All right. Welcome to Mystery Sasquatch Theater. We're in the film room, and we're going to be seeing the complete version of the Patterson-Gimlin film shot in black and white, and we'll also see it in color here. So let's go ahead and take a peek.
There's our old buddy Bob.
There's the Six Rivers National Forest. Pretty dense area, and seeing it in black and white is really kind of a nice contrast. Really brings it nostalgic.
It really,
back to the 60s.
It really does, and it really gives you a good idea how rugged and what a chore they had up there doing this.
Mm-hmm.
The poor horses are working.
Yeah, it looks like they're almost prospectors there looking for gold.
Yeah, I don't think they were mining for gold, but they sure found some.
That's for sure.
The video is definitely the gold standard.
And, you think about, what they had to do. The cameras back then, they weren't unlimited. You had to carry a certain amount of film with you, a certain amount of batteries.
Yeah, there was no rewind and redo. You had one shot at getting your shot. Mm-hmm. Or a lot of film, and I believe the film wasn't cheap back then.
It's kind of a good shot, just kind of going up the mountain there and some tree fall, potentially an old slide.
That's what it looked like to me.
And when you're out on expedition, it's always a good idea just to take some film, even if you're not looking exactly what you're looking for, but just kind of take some visuals of your surroundings. You can always go back and review them later. But I don't think Roger had a lot of film to be messing with there, so he had to be pretty specific about what he shot.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. It's spent. You can't just waste it for 3 weeks out there.
Comes Bob.
Look at them horses just packed.
A lot of supplies there. Just look at the side. It's almost like a gigantic suitcase mounted on the side.
I know. Just dense. Just strolling along, waiting for some Gene Autry song to come on.
As they come around the bend, it's kind of really when everything kind of takes off, and I bet all hell broke loose. And you can see Patty step out of the tree lane there to the left. And now Roger's kind of dismounting, trying to get down where he can stabilize the camera. And I believe Bob said he was starting to look around. He's kind of getting fearful there might be more than one.
Yeah, and here comes that iconic twist. There it is, the look back, just an iconic photo. Everybody's seen that.
And then here's where Roger's going to get behind the creature, try to reposition himself to watch it walk off there into the distance. And then Patty exits into the far tree line. All right, now we're going to watch it in the original color version. The color corrections back then on the old cameras, just not really what they are today, that's for sure.
No, it wasn't a click of a button. I think
sure would have been nice to have an iPhone.
Wouldn't it? I think there was a lot of chemicals involved and whatnot. A lost art.
Interesting too, they didn't have the walkie-talkies or cell reception. They didn't have cell phones, and, there's just no GPS equipment either. So, you're out there in the wilderness by yourselves, camping for 3 weeks. That had to be pretty intense. You had to have all your supplies on board.
Yeah, how do you stay stealthy? You had to scream to each other, so to kind of be quiet out there.
Right. They didn't have purification filters, pretty shoddy at best. So they probably had to boil a lot of water. Kind of almost survival mode up there.
Pretty much, yeah. Nothing really. Well, you can see by the horses, they had to pack a lot in.
You see how that tree fell.
Landslide, maybe? I think the area in that area is prone for slides and washouts.
Yeah, so I'm assuming here, this clip, they're kind of coming up that Bluff Creek riverbed, and I've heard Bob talk about that quite a bit, to get down into that area and just have a clearing, where it was a little bit easier to navigate. But, such a great horseman just to know, kind of how to navigate that terrain.
The limits of his animals, and a very knowledgeable guy when it comes to that. He loves talking about it.
Bob's still a handsome man on a horse.
Isn't he, though?
like maybe on a Forest Service road there.
Moving on down the road.
And again, as we come around the bend, I think we'll be able to see a little bit clearer here in color. You'll see Patty immediately step out of the left tree line. Right there.
Yep.
Good contrast there on the foot.
Which is nice for getting scale on our side.
I can imagine too, not only just the fear, the panic, the anxiety, trying to get everything stabilized. That would be tough. There it is. There's the pose.
Yep. Just imagine being there. That had to be just exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to catch up to her now.
Yep, and there again, she's going to exit behind the tree line. I don't know about you, Dwayne, but every time I see that piece of footage, it just kind of brings me back all the way to the first time I saw it on In Search Of, but so nostalgic.
All the way back to 1977, I'm telling you. Yeah, it is an iconic piece of footage. It did it for me. It really lit me up as a child.
And I remember laying on the shag carpet in front of the console TV, hearing Nimoy talk about, this creature and the way that thundered through I think we had a Zenith or an RCA, I can't remember at the time, but, it was one of those with the stereo speakers on the side and laying there, and it shook me to my core. I mean, my mouth was on the floor, and, that really lit a match, right, to the whole genre and inspired an entire generation.
It did. It blew up from them. We look at it today. I mean, it went viral before viral was viral. I mean, you really it had to be a story to get all around the world,
Yeah, and it hit the Associated Press. Just about every newspaper was talking about it. I remember my dad and all his hunting buddies, they were talking about it. They wanted to take a trip up to the Pacific Northwest or Northern California to go after this creature, right?
Sure.
And it was really a breathtaking clip.
It did. Like you say, it hit everything. Reader's Digest, National Geographic. I mean, all the magazines, I remember sitting in the dentist office, flipping through, and there's a Bigfoot article in the middle of some, High Life magazine or something, it went everywhere.
Yeah, my mom even was telling me that they were in a beauty salon where they used to have the overhead with the curlers, and they were even talking about it in the beauty shop, so, I mean, it was really a groundbreaking piece of footage.
Isn't that something? And here we are still today, and still as a stunning a piece of footage as ever.
Right, and of course, Roger, he had a lot of help to make that happen. And we were talking earlier about, he needed a good outdoorsman and a horseman to really navigate that terrain. And he had a good crew.
That's where our buddy Bob comes in.
Yeah, so Bob Gimlin, he was the horse packer that kind of helped Roger get the horse equipment and head down to the Northern California area with Roger. But Dwayne and I have both had a good chance to spend a lot of time with Bob. Super straight shooter, spent time in the Army Reserves and the Navy. Couple tours there in Korea, but super stand-up guy, and
did a little stunt riding with Evel Knievel.
Yeah, and to think about, Bob, he loves his horses and he loves his ranch. I mean, this wasn't, this was something he wanted to help with, but it wasn't his passion.
No, his passion was the ranch and the horses and living life.
Yeah, and so we had the, of course, we've met him at a lot of conferences, but we had the pleasure of having Bob attend Alien Con in Pasadena with us, and that was a fantastic event back in 2018. And for those that got to meet Bob, it was awesome. He's such a gracious man, and grace us with his presence for an entire weekend to bring his love to all of the fans of the film was amazing.
Yeah, it's good to see him back on the circuit and coming out of his shell and coming back for the fan, because I've spent many hours with him myself, and what a stand-up guy. I mean, he's just an honest, down-home dude, he'd do anything for you.
Yeah, and after the the film was shot, they took it on tour. Of course, Roger, I believe his brother-in-law, Al D. Atlee. Yeah. And then Bob. And there's a lot of controversy around something like that, as you guys can all imagine. And I think, Bob kind of got a little bit caught up in it, just all the negativity around it.
Yeah, I had a conversation with him that you know, and I can sympathize with the man. You know, it was a lot of "you're a liar" and "it's a hoax" and you know, you're just trying to make money. And Bob just was like, you know what, I don't need this. I just go back and just go back and be me. I didn't want to do this in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think he said too, it was kind of becoming more of a family affair a little bit, and I'm sure that kind of put some shades on it as well. But he just wanted to step back and you know, get back to his life.
And to prove that point, he sold his share of the film for $1 to Renee DeHenden. Said, "I'm out."
Yeah.
See ya.
And so, you know, Al and of course Renee and Roger, they took it on tour to all the auditoriums, you know, all around the Northwest, and opened for a couple different productions, I think.
Yeah, it was like the little teaser of the opening for major motion pictures and whatnot. I remember seeing the flyers for it at the movie theaters.
Right. But, you know, Bob was instrumental in making it happen because he was the one that was able to, like I said, get Roger where he needed to go. And he was the skilled horseman.
He was the workhorse behind it all.
Right. Yeah. He was part of the crew. And, you know, I can imagine, you know, being part of that. And I believe even his wife at the time was a teller at a financial institution. And he told me that, you know, she took a lot of ridicule. And so it wasn't just him. It was his entire life got kind of blown up being around it. So he just wanted to step back.
Yeah, I say I can sympathize with him. The same kind of thing happened to me, but I'm glad he's back now.
Yeah, and so if you ever get a chance and you make it to conferences and Bob's a speaker, you definitely have to make it out to meet him. Like I said, super stand-up guy, straight shooter, and you know, I hope Bob can remain on the circuit.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. If you get a chance, I mean, he's a very approachable man and just a nice guy, and we know him. We've talked to him. You get a chance to talk to him, just 5 minutes in, you'll know exactly what me and Chuck are talking about.
So when we, I guess it was October of 2017, we released a podcast on the 50th anniversary of the Patterson film.
One of my favorites.
Thanks. And, you know, we had a lot of questions coming in because there is a lot of controversy. There's a lot of speculation and a lot of stories out there on what else transpired around it. And we've taken a lot of questions over the years.
Definitely have taken a lot of questions, and we're going to try and bring you some answers.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back, and we're going to get to some of your best. Well, welcome back, everybody, and we're going to get into some of your most popular questions over the last couple of years since we released that podcast. So we wanted to get back into a couple of the biggest questions and controversies surrounding the Patterson film, and two different topics kind of bubble up when you look at all of the requests and all the different things people send in, you know, about the authenticity of the film and everything else. But there's two specific topics. One is a gentleman named Bob Hieronymus.
Yeah, it's Bob Hieronymus. It claims to be the man in the suit.
Right. And the other one was the Morris Costume Company out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'll just give you guys a little bit of background, then we'll talk about kind of our take on these two controversies that seem to constantly bubble up. And again, anecdotal at best. It's hearsay. You know, everybody tried to jump in on this topic and try to make a buck. The first one, of course, is Bob Hieronymus. He's pretty famous for saying he was their buddy, and he was the one in the suit, and he passed a lie detector on a couple different programs. Said Roger cheated him out of $1,000 that he promised him to make the trek. But as we know, you know, Bob was not even able to tell anybody where the film was shot specifically, and doesn't meet the dimensions of the creature. And yeah, his story, it doesn't really hold a lot of water either.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, he seen him on a TV program. He took the lie detector test, and he's like, "Okay, see, I told you." But Roger also took a lie detector test and he passed.
Yeah.
So would the real hoaxer please stand up? You know?
Right. And unfortunately, Roger's not able to because he passed on, right, and took it to his grave. So
yeah.
But again, you know, we know Bob Gimlin, and like I said, we know Bob's a real straight shooter. And you know, when you get into some of these controversies too, you know, you look at the Morris Costume Company. I believe the gentleman's name was Philip Morris. He did a video about, you know, back in the 60s, he had a ad out for $435 for a gorilla costume. And he said Roger called him and said he needed to get a subject into, you know, a big gorilla suit. And I think the story goes that Roger had said, you know, send me the suit. And if it works out, I'll send you a check. And Philip Morris says, he said, send me a money order. And if it works out and you keep the costume, I'll cash it. But if I get the suit back, I'll send it back to you. So that's a story. You know, I appreciate folks that send us that information. But, you know, there's a lot of missing elements to that as well. For one thing, I believe when Renee DeHenden returned to the site, we did, there's a lot of great information on this, but you know, the creature's chest size is about 83 inches, they estimate.
Yeah, it's a booming chest. That's
and
for sure.
7'3", of which Bob Hieronymus isn't even close.
No.
The costume, even if Bob said he put it on with shoulder pads and a helmet and stuffed it full of stuff, it doesn't explain a lot of the other anatomical features that have been pointed out on that creature.
Oh, with all that on, just and navigating a sticky sand bed and everything else. And what was that? Supposedly, he said the costume didn't fit right, so he threw on a football helmet or something. And
yeah, stuffed it.
It just doesn't add up for me. Watching the footage myself, it doesn't fit.
Yeah. And I think it's always funny that Bob said, you know, he was going to rendezvous with them. I mean, it's not like we had GPS. They didn't have GPS phones back then to say, okay, we're going to meet at this specific point at this specific, you know, time and all this. But, you know, Bob came up with a pretty interesting story. Again, anecdotal. Don't know Bob Hieronymus either. But, you know, there's just a lot of issues with even his polygraph because if I'm not mistaken, Roger passed the same polygraph.
Yes, he did. I mean, just some of the statements Hieronymus made just are strange to me. He said while he was doing it, he was worried about getting shot. Well, if this thing was all a hoax and made up, who was shooting? The only other person there with the gun was Bob Gimlin, and if he wasn't in on this, man, why you know what I mean? Just some of this, it just doesn't add up for me.
Yeah, and if he was nuts enough to wear a costume sitting in that Bluff Creek riverbed with hunters and everything else in that forest,
sitting out there and just all by yourself, waiting around for someone to come along,
yeah, for $1,000, I don't think, no, not even in '67, no, I don't think anybody's willing to take that risk. But you know, Philip Morris, he had also said that after he sent Roger the suit, you know, Roger said it didn't fit, you know, try shoulder pads and stuff it and do all these things. But when you watch the footage, I mean, there's a herniated muscle on the thigh.
Yeah.
You know, that's not explainable. There's a lot of anatomical features on the neck and the trapezius area, especially like some darker fur. Philip Morris said, oh, well, we explained that because Roger said he wanted to cover the zipper and I told him to cover over it, and I sent him some fur and some hairspray, and that doesn't hold up in that type of weather condition and all the heat that Bob was saying he was about ready to pass out. But yeah, there's just a lot of issue with that whole story, in my opinion.
I agree too. Again, the film's been scrutinized so much. I mean, you guys go check it out yourselves. There's a lot out there on it. A lot of people have done a lot of stabilization, like you say, a lot with it. And if you really, really look at it, it's not just a man in a suit. It just, that doesn't hold up. You can see the muscle movement. It's just, there's a lot there, a lot of anatomical correctness as far as we know.
Yeah, and the dimensions weren't accurate, you know, between Bob and the gate. Never been able to prove that. And, you know, there's just a lot to it. Now, of course, there is controversy. Someone wrote in and said, well, what about, you know, Roger just being a con man? And, you know, there's a lot of questions about all these financial things he promised. I guess he got sued by 7 of the people he promised some royalties of the film. I think that the camera company in Yakima had to issue a warrant for his arrest to get the camera back.
Yeah, it's almost kind of the sad part's almost kind of a cry wolf thing. You know, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to go do that. You know, all his life just doing whatever he could to make a buck. this happened. And they're like, uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was, talking to Dr. Meldrum at Alien Con we did down in Dallas. And I said, the first time I ran across footprints, what are you going to say? Here you are, someone on the airways and in marketing and in broadcasting. And, oh, sure, you had your, encounter and you had your, this evidence that you found. But I did. So, what am I supposed to say about it? And you had the same experience.
Exactly. Yeah. I seen what I seen and went and told people. And, you soon find out that, no, you didn't. No, I don't believe you. And
yeah. And, Roger, he, for what it is, I mean, maybe he got lucky and, he really did capture that creature on film. Again, I wasn't there to say yay or nay, but I just from all the research we've done over the years and then talking to Bob, we all have our own opinion. So Dwayne, what's your final take on the film?
My opinion, I think the film is legit. Just it completely legit. I mean, it holds itself up.
Yeah, and I think that if you think of the hours and hours of people trying to debunk it and never been able to do it, it just shows the that the film's real. So
agreed, definitely agreed. It's real. It stands by itself.
So we want to hear your comments. We want to know what you guys think of the Patterson film, and you can contact us on the website sasquatchsyndicate.com or contact@sasquatchsyndicate.com on email. And thanks for joining us.